When asked about President Trump's Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh during an interview with CBS News this morning, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said he will fight the nomination with everything he's got, which means he should probably be confirmed by this time tomorrow. The Trump Report starts now.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Yes, indeed. Welcome to the Trump Report. We are going to be talking about Here Comes the Judge. I'm Christian Blatt, back after a week off. Hope everybody enjoyed celebrating America. Whether you love it or hate it, you can celebrate it. That's fine. We welcome all here on the Trump Report. And as I said, I'm Christian Blatt. Joined for our first timer here on the panel, Steve Kaufman or Kaufman? I realized I didn't ask that. And
Kaufman, because I'm at least third generation German.
Yeah, okay.
So if your grandfather said, the way your grandfather says it is the way it is.
Right.
And
okay.
I was always taught the fact you could love it or hate it is why it's America.
Yeah, well, my grandfather, it's not a good judge because he called Italians eye ties. So obviously, you know, it's not where we're going to go. And on the other end of the desk, the one, the only, Chelsea Galicia. Hi, Chelsea.
Hello.
And we'll get some of our regulars back next week, but we're glad that Steve was able to answer the bat signal on short notice. For those who do or don't know, Chelsea, we often refer to you as a recovering lawyer, but I feel like the recovery's not going well. You know,
I have suffered a relapse.
Yeah, you've definitely relapsed. So,
but I've kept it to like a hobby, or like I would say a after hours.
It's a
addiction.
It's an addiction.
An after five.
Right.
So it's a controlled addiction.
So it's like how people are social drinkers.
Exactly.
You know,
Okay.
it's not really a
I'm
problem.
a social lawyer.
You're a social lawyer.
You're a part-time lawyer.
Fortunately for us, you know, somebody in the chat might say you're a socialist lawyer. I'm just saying that somebody in the chat, we're not going to say who that is.
A democratic socialist lawyer.
Thank you.
Must be correct
because
with your words.
To some people, that term socialist is an insult, but Chelsea would say,
it's not insult, it's just inaccurate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But
we care about accuracy.
Because of your background, I would like to ask you about Brett Kavanaugh. We can certainly get plenty of opinion, but let's start with some facts.
Okay. Ooh, I love
some
those.
reading, yeah.
Yeah. So, who is this guy? He is a Yale guy, which, like everybody else on the court, is either a Yale or a Harvard guy. So much for, you know, diversity. I was thinking, you know, Trump might go out on the limb and get somebody from like an unaccredited law school or something. That would be
from
very
Trump University, perhaps.
Yes.
See, it's how could you say it's a failure?
Right. So, I mean, surprise, not surprised. You know, this was on the short list by the Federalists, who is this group that say they're very committed to the letter of the law and the Constitution, which I love that you take issue with that, because there's lots to take issue with. Like the word internet did not exist at the time that the Constitution or the amendments were drafted.
Well, I mean, the word electricity. We'll take it a few steps back before internet. Yeah, there's a lot of things that they weren't able to factor in.
Strict constructionist who only looks at the letter of the law and the Constitution and applies that to modern day law.
Yeah, because you do have the people who just view the Bill of Rights. Like, they're like, oh, the first 10 amendments were good, but man, they sold out after that. So, obviously. What were you going to say, Steve?
Well, but my issue with anyone who tells me that they want to follow the Constitution by the way it was written never understood the Constitution. Because the Constitution was written ambiguously because they knew they couldn't possibly foresee a world with electricity and internet and cars and worldwide war in America as a world superpower, and then everyone being able to communicate within seconds. So the letter of, like, the Constitution is written is useless.
Right. And so then the argument, you know, by people who say, I like, you know, judges who just look at the law, interpret the law, and don't write their own law, you know, have this extreme point where it's either we look at the exact words in the Constitution and follow those, or judges are making up their own law. And there's not something in between where they're interpreting this, you know, 240 some odd years ago, by some standards, is an ancient text, right? So how do you apply this like ancient text to like our modern legal challenges? You know, so that's why I think that I love that you take issue with that, even as a non-lawyer, and hopefully see that there are like shades of gray in this, like, you know, strict construction versus judges who just are making up the law themselves. There is, you know, much
but I think
space in the middle.
But I think the fact that that's the two sides is part of my problem, is that the fact that, oh, judges are either reading the Constitution literally or they're making it up.
Well, no,
like, is a complete fabrication.
Liberals
I'm not
don't say that the judges
yeah.
should be making it up. The conservatives are
Conservative,
saying that's what happens. So be that as it may. So that's you know, one fart.
Oh, no, that
one
statement to
part
me is
of
Wow.
one
Did you just say fart on the show? Chelsea, what has happened to you?
I don't know, and I am going to, you know, pretty soon talk about anal sex with respect to this
I'm
analysis
sorry,
that I have.
did I sit on the wrong show today? I'm
No.
I'm really
No.
confused.
I really,
no, this
I,
is The Handmaid's Tale.
I figured that
prequel.
that my conversation about the makeup of what will soon be the court deserved a little discussion of the Fourth Amendment, and I understand that for some people that might be a little dry, so I thought I would include some subject matter about the Fourth Amendment and what it covers so that people might be interested. And part of that does include what you can do in the privacy of your own home with another consenting adult.
And sometimes the problems with that is that is also dry. Steve, when you heard about...
I saw the wheels in your mind moving.
They were moving
come up
very
with that.
slow.
Yeah.
They were moving very slow. It was sort of very obvious, and I almost stopped myself, but you know me, I can't. So the little bit that you've heard, I mean, look, I think that there are certainly people who had heard Kavanaugh's name around before, but so you hear about this nominee, you've had, we've had almost 12 hours now to soak in who he is. What are sort of your gut reactions when you hear about this guy?
Personal from me that wants the Trump machine to fail a little. I disagree with everyone this morning who's saying that he's the most confirmable of the three. I thought Amy What's-Her-Face was the least confirmable. They're saying that he's the least confirmable.
He's the least confirmable.
The people this morning have all been saying he's the least confirmable because he has the most decisions in the book. What they're forgetting is that there's a majority, so that doesn't actually matter. Whereas the woman who was also the youngest of the three,
and all I remember is that her name was Amy as well.
And that she was an appointee from Donald Trump within 2 years ago. Within 2 years, and I thought she would be a political move that would have backfired. Yeah. In the sense that she would have never gotten confirmed.
Yeah, it's almost like
confirmed, and then it would have made it to the election, and then the base would have turned out for the election. They're
right.
Like, oh, we got a Supreme Court seat's at stake.
Right, exactly. And I think obviously Democrats have the hope that somehow this hearing would drag on beyond that, but my little pot shot at Chuck Schumer in the open, there's not really much they can do about this. They can complain about it all they want.
It's true. They can ask Mitch McConnell, hey, you said in the year of an election you shouldn't confirm a nominee.
But you do know what his answer is that was a presidential election. So that's already what he said. So, I mean, and look, I'm certainly not defending Mitch McConnell, but that's what he said. So that's already his stance on it. It's like, that's a presidential election. That's very different as far as he's concerned.
It's a distinction without a difference, or a difference without a distinction. One of the two.
One of the same. Yeah.
But that explains Mitch McConnell pretty well to me. It's just like, he wants what he wants, and he'll change the rules to make it happen to make it happen however he wants it.
And defend.
Yeah, and
sure. And I mean, look, obviously you end up in a situation like this because of precedent. And, I don't think Harry Reid really did Democrats any favors, playing some fast and loose with some rules back in his day. And then, but look, everybody does it.
Obviously. At the time, it was a stalemate. There was no way to get anything done.
Yeah.
And so we felt that this was the only way to allow government to move forward.
And to give Harry Reid and Obama some credit at that time, the stalemate was because the Democrats tried to work with Republicans, and the Republicans just thwarted them at every cost. That they were like, well, we have a majority. We tried. Yeah. Let's keep the government moving. Whereas that doesn't I don't see that happening today. The Republicans pretty much say, we have the majority, we're going to do it. And the Democrats say, but we're in the room, though. We can get a subcommittee and do well, whatever. We're just going to pass the stuff.
Right. I mean, ultimately, when it comes down to the fact that there will obviously be hearings, you don't really get much out of the hearings. I mean, apart from Clarence Thomas and the pubic hair on the Coke can. I mean, honestly, and I guess Judge Bork before that, you don't get much out of these hearings. They give the most bland, safe, non-committal answers. And you're just like, if you go based on what everybody says, it's like, oh, well, then obviously everybody will uphold the letter of the law because they're all going to say the right things. It's like a really bad blind date. You're going to sit down. And you're going to obviously put your best foot forward. I was going to make a comment about swiping right, but I actually don't know. Is that when you like someone, or is it when you don't like
That's
someone?
when you like someone.
That's when you like someone. All right, good. I'm glad you knew. So yeah, so they're going to just try and see if maybe, just maybe, somebody dreamy like Chuck Schumer will swipe right on you. But I don't know. I mean, do you think, Chelsea, that really the hearings are actually going to yield anything other than on both sides political posturing?
No,
There's going to be a lot of like, well, people that are going to be up for re-election in November and people that are looking further down the road. They're like, well, this will look good in my commercial. I stood up to Brett Kavanaugh.
Yeah, I don't think that this is going to be a big deal. I don't think that Lisa Murkowski or
Collins.
Yes, are going to do anything surprising, or maybe we're going to get 50 votes yes, and then Pence is the tiebreaker. Whatever. He'll come in there to the Rocky theme, and obviously save the day. But I kind of just want to put this on the record. Conservatives, be careful what you ask for, because mind if I go into my
please. So you want to talk about the Fourth Amendment?
Yeah. So
and give us the few word. So how like the First Amendment, freedom of speech, that sort of thing. So what exactly is the Fourth Amendment?
Ironically, the thing that the Fourth Amendment represents, the word is not in the actual amendment. So generally, the way to say condense it what it is like privacy.
Okay.
But the word privacy is nowhere in it. Let me tell you what I mean, because it says, and it's not long, I promise, it says the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. So basically, government can't come in and take stuff from you without a warrant. They can't unreasonably search you. So what does that have to do with privacy? Is that the whole analysis bends on what somebody has a reasonable expectation of privacy over. And that's how we get all sorts of decisions, from abortion to who can have what kind of sex to birth control, are all constitutionally connected by the Fourth Amendment's baked in right to privacy. So let me explain what I mean. Birth control, the case was in 1965, Griswold versus Connecticut. The court decided it was the right of a couple to have their own privacy and determine if they want to use birth control. The anti-sodomy laws that I'm referring to, tried to tell people that homosexuals couldn't engage in certain kinds of sex acts.
Let me just interrupt for a minute. Are those laws? I thought that those were state laws and still on the books in some states.
Those are on they were state laws,
right?
And somebody in Texas, it's only one, thank God. I think I almost pluralized it. Texas challenged.
Our friend Cherryl, Texas, would take umbrage with that. And so would our friend Brooke Solis, who's from Texas. But anyway, go ahead.
Challenged the law, and the court said that this is constitutionally invalid because it infringes on somebody's right to privacy, and also their 14th Amendment due process. So they kind of go hand in hand in a lot of cases. Roe versus Wade. The abortion decision was not decided because the Supreme Court found in the Constitution that there was a right to abortion. They found it because there was a right to privacy between a woman and her doctor to make medical decisions, including those based on pregnancy. So that's the constitutional logic that gave rise to Roe versus Wade, and to some extent same-sex marriage. In a lot of these cases that people are concerned about, what is this one judge's decisions on those things going to be? But if you pull out Roe versus Wade and flip it and say we no longer have a right to abortion, it's not just that we no longer have a right to abortion, it's that the underlying constitutional logic, the explanation for why we had that right in the first place, will also have to be reversed. So that will mean then that the court will have to say, we were wrong on this privacy thing. People don't have this right to privacy. And it will slowly but surely undermine, I kind of envision it in my mind like Jenga pieces, where you pull out case by case. You don't like birth control, you pull that out. You don't like abortion, you pull that out. But soon enough, you're going to really weaken the structures that we have around our privacy protections. And so things like government surveillance might have, on the surface, nothing to do with abortion. But same, Fourth Amendment is what protects us from government surveillance or things of that nature. That's not protecting us very well right now. But let's just say somebody takes your information from social media and hands that over to the government. Could do that in this day and age.
Would the person taking my information off social media be, I don't know, Facebook?
Right, a private entity. However, a private entity and how cozy these corporations are now becoming with the government. It's almost like, a private corporation can be an arm of the government and retrieve this data, on behalf of the government, and thereby kind of going around the Constitution. What I'm saying is, if you are a vote for Kavanaugh is a vote to weaken our privacy rights. He has made decisions on warrantless searches by the government. Says government data can collect is one of those that protects, that sees that the government can, in the name of national security.
Well, I was going to ask, because that seems to be something that, also our previous president did on occasion. It's not specifically a partisan issue. It seems to be sort of, whenever you really need to circumvent somebody's rights, you say, well, obviously it's a national security threat. And look, sometimes I think it really is. And I think, I hear plenty of cases where I'm like, yeah, all right, well, I don't like the precedent, but good that they got this information out of, this person.
Well, depending on who you ask, we've never gotten anything from, torturing anybody or violating somebody's rights. That the information that the government has collected is just so massive that is too much and overwhelming, and has not actually led to any more safe.
Yeah, no, I do feel bad that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed didn't have a nice pillow, but I'll get over it, I think. So in terms of Roe versus Wade, it's something that Kavanaugh's been asked about before. It is the clip that you see a lot, but he wasn't nominated for the Supreme Court at that point.
I'll follow
in fact,
that.
His answers are very specifically like, well, that's the Supreme Court precedent. So I guess, and look, we'll move on from the one issue, but it's obviously the one that seemingly the majority of people are most concerned about. And look, on the conservative side, I know a lot of people who disliked Donald Trump, but they disliked him less than they disliked Hillary Clinton. And the one reason that they didn't stay home and vote is because of the idea that they could get some Supreme Court justices. So for them, this is an important issue for sort of the other side, because they do want to.
Why I say they're going to shoot themselves in the foot, be careful what you ask for, is because you take away the strength of the case on Roe versus Wade. You pull out the privacy, and conservatives all over the place are like, they want to be free to do whatever they want. They don't want government to infringe on their lives. They want to have their own liberties and freedoms and privacy, right? So this sword cuts both ways. If you're going to limit people's access to abortion by undermining their privacy rights, it's also going to come back to bite you.
What were you going to say about that, Steve?
I will say that there's a separate issue here, which is, will Kavanaugh, I believe it's the Ginsburg rule, where in hearings, Ginsburg decided she would not mention a case that may or may not come up in nomination. So when you ask him about Roe versus Wade in his nomination, he's just going to run out the clock and say, I don't know. Right. I don't know. As of this moment, I'm a nominee for Supreme Court, and at this moment, I'd be giving you an opinion.
Yeah.
I can't just say I'm going to read the case and see what the merits.
Right. Well, this goes back to the earlier point that you're not going to get anything out of these hearings.
Well, and it goes back to the early point that Supreme Court nominations have become such a useless show. But within the useless show, there are some things the Democrats can do. Because under that Ginsburg rule, you can also they use that Ginsburg rule to also say that any public information that person had ruled on or ever said is then able to be used in the nomination hearing. So correct me if I'm wrong, but it was Justice Kagan who was Obama's second appointee.
I believe she was.
She
Yeah.
worked in the Clinton White House or the Obama White House. My data is not perfect, but she worked at
She worked under a Democrat for sure.
She worked in a Democratic White House, which means everything she said in that White House was in the presidential library and considered public record.
Yeah.
So that became part of her nomination. I see no reason why what this person said in the Bush White House, if we're putting on a show anyway and we're all just trying to rally our base to come out and like, I was tough on this person and voted no for these reasons. Like, if we're going to put on a show, put on a great show.
Right.
And I think this is some of the stuff you can do to put on a great show in a nomination.
And the point blank question for both of you really is, I don't see a scenario where he's not named to the Supreme Court. I don't think that the numbers are there. Chelsea, I think that's sort of what you were saying earlier when you said why the hearings don't matter that much.
I'm resigned. And I also have very little hope that Democrats will take control of the Senate come November, so they can try and delay it.
And then just because they win some elections in November, there's still the whole month of November and all of December that a lot can happen.
Unless somebody comes out and finds some really terrible thing that this guy said or did once.
But I don't think people get that upset by, the only person to really suffer for having said something bad in the 2016 presidential election was Billy Bush. He's still not on TV. He's the guy who has been made to pay. So I don't know.
He didn't even say anything either.
It's true. He was in the room. That's a great point.
On the bus with a guy
He got
who
in
said
trouble
something
for
terrible.
not saying something. He just was like, that's all he ever does. That's all Billy Bush ever did. Anyway, so one thing I want to talk about, you had mentioned both Murkowski and Collins came up. I thought it was, speaking of showmanship, President Trump, to the hearing last night, he invited Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins and the three Democrats who voted yes on Neil Gorsuch, who are Joe Manchin. I almost said Helmkamp. That's Heitkamp. Helmkamp is somebody we used to do the Trump versus Hillary with, and Joe Donnelly. So, and none of them went. So I think even Lisa Murkowski, well, you know what? Maybe she wanted to be watching The Bachelorette, which that's sort of a side story that there was caught up in all the backlash to the pick was that people watching The Bachelorette and ABC were very upset that this nomination interrupted it. So
Yikes.
you should really time things around the commercials better, but that's all right.
I actually have. I felt this way with Neil Gorsuch too. Aside from the fact he shouldn't have had that he shouldn't have had that ability. But when he decides to do it 9 p.m. Eastern on a Monday night, I actually agree with that. I think more presidents should have some pomp and circumstance in a show to things that are that important.
Yeah, no, I mean, Reagan was great at it, and there was one time where I think it was ABC got tired of it, and they didn't air it, and then all of a sudden they found themselves with worse seats in the briefing room. They definitely were penalized for it. And, there are people who are decent at manipulating the media and kind of getting what they want out of them. So that sounds like President Trump. So, I think putting it in a spot where, that's the first thing I heard when I heard that it was going to be at 9 p.m. Eastern. It's like, all right, because you're getting a primetime show out of it.
Well, and I hate that that's his mentality. Yeah. But I do agree that a Supreme Court justice is a pretty big deal.
It should
have
Trump. For lack of a better term.
Trump.
The Bachelorette. I don't even know which one it is.
I believe it's the Bachelorette, but I also I only heard that earlier this morning. So.
The one with the rose.
But the other thing that I want to say that we really want to be careful of is everybody's focusing on past precedents. A little bit of superfluous there on abortion and things like that. But the cases that are to come that have to do with corporate personhood are where, for me, this is not looking good. That his record on consumer protection and all things individual liberties is very weak, and very strong advocate of corporations and their rights of personhood, which really bums me out.
That is laughable in theory.
So I just and as corporations get stronger in their rights and individuals, and specifically our privacy, gets weaker, I think conservatives are going to be like, holy shnikes, what did I do in supporting somebody so conservative? I thought, I was standing up for, the good Christian values of, no abortion and things like that. But now I have no rights. Not only is the government infringing upon me, but so is corporate America. and then they feel quite stifled in their individual privacy. And I think, I don't know, 10 years and they'll be coming to regret their choice.
Don't ever discount the Republicans' ability to blame the Democrats for everything that's currently wrong.
Yes.
Right. I mean,
they're
that's
incredible at that.
Sure. I mean, it's sort of an intrinsic, reflexive thing
Like
that
Harley
you're
Davidson
always going to blame the other party. But yeah, Harley Davidson
is somehow Obama's fault. I don't know how. They'll find a way to make that Obama's fault.
Right.
Like
and
it's the most artful thing I've ever seen.
yeah. No. No.
Like,
no.
On just a pure merit based, I have respect. Or it's like, that's kind of ridiculous. Like, you're
Well, no,
amazing.
I mean, like, there's definitely sort of a lot of that, reluctant. Like, you have to kind of tip your red hat sometimes, and you're just like, well, I don't know if I like what's going on here, but he definitely worked this whole thing. Getting to be president in the first place, you're just like, literally everyone said that you couldn't do it. So it's really just a consistent, almost 2 years now of just telling him he can't do things. I did want to move on to another legal topic, and that is how Rudy Giuliani says that Michael Cohen should cooperate with prosecutors. Every time Rudy says something, I'm just like, did anyone vet what you said? Like,
who's left to vet?
Well, I mean, anybody. No, I mean anybody at anybody in the president's office. And the fact that Rudy's still there.
If Rudy Giuliani's your legal counsel,
Yeah.
I think most of the intelligent people have left. Like you're down to really like that. He can't be your first choice as a lawyer. He's no one's fifth
he
choice.
clearly wasn't,
Yeah,
because
like-
he's getting a job. Sort of. I don't know. I mean, he's getting a job 2 years in, basically.
He interviewed for that job on Fox News.
Yeah.
So like I don't know. Like, is anyone vetting him? Is the question? No one's left.
I mean, he thinks that he's just saying, yes, of course, cooperate with prosecutors because we have nothing to hide. I don't know. Does Giuliani is he not in on the truth? Like, he doesn't.
Well, that's the
really
thing
know.
is, I think that he was away from the party for a little while, and I don't mean the party, the GOP. I mean he's away from the Trump party.
Yeah.
He was off doing. Well, if you read the New York Post, you know exactly what he was up to. But he wasn't doing anything professional. So I think that he's probably there because he has plausible deniability on a lot of stuff. Because he's just like, yeah, of course that'll happen. Because he doesn't know. Maybe that's why he's there, to be kept in the dark. And like, yeah, you weren't here. You have no idea what was going on.
I think it was a very interesting statement for Cohen to come out and say, my loyalty is to my wife and my kids and country over party. I have to read into that only because most people just at this stage just shut up and they're quiet. So if they say anything, especially something like that, that's definitely getting my one eyebrow up. I don't think it was just an off-the-cuff statement.
No, I mean I think that was a very carefully worded statement that it's definitely a message to to some obvious people what he was trying to say there.
And so then does this? I don't know if the pardoning of these two guys in Oregon is any more of like, look at the strength of my pardoning power. Let's wave it like a little carrot.
I try as much as I want to put a lot of stock in the impeachment business. I understand.
Well, you would get along with Scott, who's usually here on the show.
But that's a fantasy.
He's got,
I understand
he's
that
got a
it's-
countdown clock. But
it's a complete fantasy.
Yes.
Because impeachment is not a legal or criminal decision. It's a political one. And Trump already won that game. And
yeah. And Democrats don't have the makeup with which to do that. And I think that's the main reason why you hear, your Chuck Schumers and everybody saying like, yeah, we're not going to do that now because they know they can't actually do it.
I would slightly disagree with you only to the extent that there are some very legally sound grounds on which to impeach him. Emoluments, the self-dealings,
I am in complete
lots
agreement.
of corruption. It's just what Christian's saying, the numbers. You don't have the numbers in the House to impeach and then in the Senate to sort of confirm impeachment and actually
which doesn't make it a legal it doesn't make it a legal process. And then even if that does happen, or even if they subpoena him, even if they try to prosecute him, it's never been tested. He could pardon himself.
He could, or Kavanaugh wrote a piece at one point in some decision saying that the Congress may want to look into shielding the president from any indictment or investigation.
Which was a flop from when he was on the Starr investigation and felt that you should totally investigate the president. So Kavanaugh's got a lot to answer to that he's not going to.
Yeah, there's very little that he'll actually answer to. Before we run out of time, Chelsea, I know that there was something else you wanted to talk about, which was a deadline that we had today. And so
I know
so explain what that is.
we've all become very excited or enraged, depending on where you stand, by the Supreme Court nomination, but there are still somewhat like 3,000 kids that are separated from their parents, and there was a deadline by a court today that they were supposed to return all children under 5 years old, which are about 104 of them, and it is the day of the deadline and only half of them have been returned. So the court said, yeah, we need to extend it because it's not feasible for the government to return them all. They've lost track of some parents because parents have been, deported or released, and which goes to show that Alex Azar, Human Health and Services Secretary, when he said, oh yeah, I can find any person right away in my database, was just flat out lying. And I
although that is an on the job lie. I mean, I think we've all said that. Oh yeah, I can absolutely get that done, even when you're like, oh, there's no way I can get that done. But so obviously there are. You could look at it as in like, hey, they got half of them, because I think there might have been people that thought that they were going to get none of them.
If you get half in school, that's a D. That is not passing.
I did get a lot of D's in school, so I'm just going to have to take your word for it because it seems like it's passing.
If we are the administration of law and order, if the judge says return the kids by July 10th, you return the kids by July 10th, or you do not claim to be the administration of law and order.
So you're saying that this administration is acting hypocritically for the first time in the terms of being there?
She got him. She uncovered it.
He finally figured it out. Yeah, this is the first time he's been on record. We'll start keeping a tally. We'll keep it on the big board here, like we're having a telethon. So, what was the deadline extended to? They're looking into that still?
Yes, and then there's still the older kids to contend with.
Yeah, they just went with the under 5 because that is obviously the sort of the most egregious, I guess. And then there was a report, I think this was last week, about the toddler who was returned to his mother and he was infested with lice. So obviously, I think maybe it said that he hadn't been showered or something like that. So there's obviously a lot of questions for how this is being handled. But what do you see as a fix, Chelsea? Other than impeachment and things like that, but like
fix for everything.
The fix for this one issue, because that sort of I mean, it's not like Pence is going to make anything any better anyway. So
I mean, all hands on deck on taking care of these kids and reuniting them with their parents. I think I don't know what would it take. It should be such a priority that Trump should not meet with Putin. Not even argue with NATO, which, by the way, I don't know why. Tell me if I'm crazy for believing this. I know Trump is really upset that not all the participating countries in NATO pay their 2% GDP towards military. But if you are so upset about that and that we're paying more, we're paying 3.5% of our GDP, can't we just say we have a budget? We are a responsible fiscal country, and 2% of our GDP is X number of dollars, and we will put X number of dollars towards it, and not a penny over. And if somebody else wants to step up to the plate and make up the difference, great. If not, we have a little bit less military presence. I mean, rather than bully everybody and say pay your 2%, when the 2% is actually a goal, not an obligation. So why can't we just stop overspending?
Well, I mean, that's a question that goes back to I don't know, when did this country start? So I'm going to say, I guess, 242 years. I think that's how do we stop overspending? They're just not capable of it. What were you going to say, Steve?
Well, I was gonna make a pun about. We overspend on the military so we can up employment in the military, and then when they get back, we just don't take care of them. That's the American tradition. Like, that's not a new thing we do. But that's I agree that he clearly doesn't want to deal with NATO. Like, a rational, actual deal maker and negotiator would have walked in there and said 2%, we're out. He didn't. He doesn't want to deal with NATO. He doesn't know how to take a nuanced stance on this.
I'm starting to believe that he is just finding a path out of NATO.
I think that those tea leaves are definitely there.
Then he's gonna create an alliance with Russia.
Well, that was what I was going to say to your earlier point about how he shouldn't take the time to meet with Putin. I do think that when your boss tells you that you have to sit down with him, you're not able to say no. So if Putin has summoned him back to the homeland, obviously that's where he needs to be. In the chat, our friend R. Scott Brown pointed out back to Rudy Giuliani, says that Rudy is Trump's last defense. When the cuffs come out, Trump will say he was represented poorly by the parentheses mentally deficient Giuliani. So obviously, and the Demonot is also suggesting we could just leave NATO.
Why?
And he says it would be great if the U.S. left NATO.
Why?
You could tell us why it's great.
Yeah, I mean,
Demonot.
NATO's helped us in after 9/11. Go into Afghanistan, and it's been said it's a worthy investment for us to invest in the security of Europe. So I would love to hear why it would be great if the U.S. left NATO. Well,
I think NATO's been
hopefully
around.
get an answer.
NATO's been around long enough that I think to make it so binary is like we need to stay in NATO or leave NATO is a terrible way to approach it.
I think binary decisions are probably not a good way to approach very many things. like let's look at, if we don't like how much we are spending, why don't we just cut back our own spending?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what about the specific comment that President Trump made that he feels like the European Union, this is not specifically NATO, but was set up to take advantage of the United States to attack our piggy bank. And it's that is the ambassador to Estonia resigned over those comments, which I might know some people in the State Department, might know a few who are resigning in much smaller positions because it's just too infuriating. Do you think that what sort of impact do you think that comments like that have, not here at home but around the rest of the world, Steve?
I think they have a lot of impact, and I think America has been its own bubble. That if I'm traveling abroad, like privately, I may consider just having a Canadian flag on my backpack. On occasion, and I'm like America through and through. Like I get it, and but at the same time, like I just don't want to put up with the international stink we have and have had for a long time, for a very long time. Like internationally, we're not as regarded as like we are now. Like internationally, we're considered either Jersey Shore or like red hats.
The only people who believe Trump when Trump says now the world respects us are the people who have not left the country.
Well,
if you have left the country before Trump and after Trump and believe what Trump is saying, I'd like to hear why, although I would still may argue that you're
I think it's a fairly
little
consistent outlook. I think there were certainly people around the world that liked Obama, but I think that when you go back basically this century, I think to Steve's point, I mean, I remember I backpacked through Europe. It was the year 2000, and there were even that year. This is before the election. Even that year there were people backpacking with Canadian patches on their backpacks because I guess somewhere that was the advice. Like you just don't want the headaches. And I just flew no flags, man. That's not what I'm about.
But they'll look at you and know you're American, though.
Well,
so that you have to. It's
but
easier
I could
to fly the wrong flag.
I could talk a boot hockey as much as anybody. All right. I love Alanis Morissette. Anyway, there's, again, only a few more minutes, which is so often
Europe
what happens.
Europe has the capability of taking care of themselves. The U.S. does not need to protect European nations.
Was this the Demonot's explanation?
This is Demonot. Demonot, you're a great person for watching this show. That feels a little oversimplified.
That's the best part of the show is the disagreement. So wait, let's actually read the comment because you sort of like half read it.
Europe has the capability of taking care of themselves. U.S. does not need to protect European nations. That's not necessarily what NATO's about. NATO is about cohesiveness among most world powers to keep peace.
And it also obligates European countries to help us out. Mm-hmm. It's not just about them.
Yeah.
What the Article 5 is as an attack on one is an attack on all. that includes us. So that's what I'm saying, that it was a benefit to
Right,
us.
but
when we
I
were
think
attacked.
to a lot of people who are opposed to NATO, and it must be what the Demon is saying, is they do feel like it is a one-way street. Sure, on paper they're there to help us out. Maybe they just feel like we're not getting helped nearly enough. You know, we're always helping them move. We're always carrying the couch. Who's helped us move lately? Who's helped us move our
When
couch?
have we moved? We've been the one.
That's true. We haven't really gone anywhere, have we?
Yeah, like we're where we are, and then we
So-
keep making a bunch of.
I understand if you feel like you're pouring all this money in, well, stop pouring so much money in. But that doesn't mean that you need to get all the way out. Just meet your obligation and don't go beyond that.
Yeah.
I want to get this in here before we run out of time, and there are rumors that, unsurprising to most of us, Hillary Clinton planning on a big 2020 comeback.
Unsurprising?
I am not surprised at all, because I think I said that every time that she says she's done, I was just like, I'm more convinced.
Can she get that Netflix deal? Obama got a Netflix deal. Can they pay her more, like $1 more than Obama, and give her a Netflix deal?
I was just gonna say, if you hear that and you're Republican or Donald Trump, who some people say is a Republican, you're just like, oh yeah, please God, yes, please come back, Hillary, run again, because I think that that just shows if she were to actually run and she were to get the support of the party, it would be clear that they didn't learn anything from 2016. I mean, I think there are a lot more people that are, I don't know about more qualified, but they at least have a better chance of getting elected. I think you've seen how that went. And, sorry for Mrs. Clinton, but not fairly sure that time is definitely behind you. Your turn, you did get leapfrogged by Obama. That was when it was supposed to be your turn. Maybe you would have won then, but once that happened, it clearly wasn't going to happen for you. I don't know. I think that and Chelsea, I'll go to you first, but other than for her ego, I can't imagine any reason why she would run. Like, she has to know she's not the best person. I mean, she doesn't, but she should know.
I think that you're right in that the establishment has clearly not learned their lesson or do not want to see what's happening. At this point in time, I think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has a better shot of being president, and she hasn't even been elected to
35?
Congress. No, she's actually 28.
Yeah. So she's, but you know what? She still has a better chance than, or at least at some point, being elected president. Yeah. And it's just sad, when for anybody who has a soft spot for Hillary. And look, there's probably a lot of people watching that don't, but it's just like, oh, really? You know what? They should just put her somewhere where she thinks she's running for president, you could do like a Truman Show. You just kind of drive her around a soundstage and you think she's giving speeches.
It's rough. She needs to learn that this isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
Also...
I don't care about her learning. It's the Democratic establishment party machine that is giving her any idea that that's a good idea, who hasn't learned their lesson.
But then they need to stop placating her so she can learn that, she was never that popular. It always felt... It kind of felt like a king's rule. Like, we all kind of... I wasn't super on board with her. I was very much a Bernie leftist, in the sense that I had this comparison at the time, which was... Before Trump got the Republican nomination, I kind of wanted the Democratic Party to fall apart, so that a candidate like Bernie Sanders could actually just run as Bernie Sanders, not with the Democratic Party that seems to be in a bit of a mess. Whereas now, with Trump as president, my analogy for the Democratic Party is like if your football team is a Super Bowl team, is a playoff team, but not a Super Bowl team. And everyone's calling for the head coach's head.
Right.
If you fire the head coach, you're going to not be a playoff team for 10 years in hopes you'll eventually be a Super Bowl team. That's how I feel about the Democratic Party. I want it to fail. I want to cut the head off of it and then let
something rise from the ashes.
And see the actual... I refrain from saying the socialist Democrat only because other people turn that around. But progressive or far left liberal candidates, I want them to have a chance to truly speak to people the way Bernie did, the way I'm not going to pronounce her name, Ocasio. Okay, well then
So look, you are going to pronounce it.
I am going to pronounce it
Great
right,
job.
but like the way those people are actually reaching their constituents and running on issues, and it might just need ground roots and a hard reset, but we can't have that because who the president is.
Yeah, I mean, look, there was something about Hillary running that was reminiscent of, I would say, John McCain and Bob Dole, two people that was like, well, it's your turn now. And it was just like, it wasn't her turn anymore. And I think that you're thinking about the Democratic Party basically, collapsing, probably felt more of a comforting idea when the alternative wasn't Donald Trump. Like,
When it was Mitt Romney, when it was Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz.
Oh,
maybe
God.
not Ted Cruz, but I was going to say Rob Portman, but I don't think that
Wrong country.
No, that's a senator. I know who I'm talking about.
Oh, I thought you were talking about
About Justin Trudeau with the fake eyebrows.
No, I thought you were talking about the Portman, the mayor of the Canadian. I can't even remember. It was in Ontario. That was
Rob Ford. No, that can't be it.
Rob Ford would have look, that would have been a fun president.
He was pretty popular.
I'm just saying he was very popular with the
Name recognition.
Just think, Rob Ford would have been great for relations with Colombia and Bolivia. There's just some country. Marion Barry would be in the White House anyway. But I feel like anyway that's what we'll wind up with is like that. All of a sudden is like, oh no, we can't blow up the party, at least not right now. You have to blow it up a little later, when there's when it's not the stakes aren't so
The
high.
year we don't make the year we don't make the playoffs is when we fire the head coach.
Yeah.
Because then what's the difference?
Or it could just have an epiphany, an awakening, without having to be destroyed, without having to hit rock bottom. But we shall see what they choose to do.
That's not going to happen if Hillary wants to run again.
Well, Hillary can do whatever she wants to do. She can decide to run, not whatever.
Or if
I
Kamala
think
Harris gets a nod, just cause.
the more important thing is what is the party machine supporting.
Yeah, and I think that there's still enough people that they feel like they owe that family. There's probably, I don't know, manila envelopes with photographs that could be placed on people's desks. So like, oh yeah, we're definitely for Hillary. Just all sorts of levels like that. And look, they're able to generate a lot of money. And I don't know, I saw that story and I was just like, oh, what is wrong with her? Well, there's so much, and there's not enough time because we're out of time.
It sounds like you've described Bill Belichick. To bring it back to a sports analogy.
All right.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, what were you gonna say? I wanted to give you the final word. I was letting you have it.
Sorry. No, I was just, I don't want to make this about Hillary. I don't want to
No,
knock her
and it shouldn't
personally.
be. But look, there's a lot of reasons why. I look. I don't know how old she is. I just know she keeps falling down. I know she doesn't look like she's doing well, and it's enough already. I mean, it is 10 years past the point where you seemed like a viable candidate for president. I mean, in 2016, the only reason she seemed like a viable candidate is like, well, she's going against Donald Trump. Who could possibly lose that election? And we have our answer. Anyway, let us know if you're watching the show after the fact. You can leave comments in the chat. Thanks for everybody who's in the live chat. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ and check out Marvel TV Weekly Sundays at 10 p.m. Pacific right here on AfterBuzz. And Steve, where do people find you, and where do they find you on the network?
They can find me here and now, but also on Twitter at Steve Kaufman. That is KAUFMANN. I'm also staying in the building and watching SmackDown Live, which is a wrestling show, which I'm probably not going to tweet this link because I don't want to split my audience.
That's a great point. No, I know. It's you know what? You're there to make SmackDown great again. And Chelsea, where do people find you?
At Chelsea Glacia.
And we will find all of you back here next Tuesday. Scott will be back. Tamara will be back. We don't know who else will be here. We'll find out. But until then, have a good one. Thanks for everybody.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Keven Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.